Hey y'all, what is happening? Welcome to Normalizing Conversations. I am your host, Alexandra Nicole, and I'm so excited to be here. Listen, I have started this podcast, this video broadcast inside my home, inside my apartment, just me, and my dog loves to run around. So I just want you to know she may join us. You may hear her drinking, you may hear her moving around, you may hear her grunt, you may hear her doing all kinds of stuff, but it's just my dog, okay? It's just my baby. Today's topic on normalizing conversations is church hurt. And if you've been rocking with me, then you would have seen that I've already had this discussion on Facebook Live as well as Instagram Live. But since I'm taking my podcast broadcast to another level, to another space, to another arena, to good old YouTube, I thought, you know what, the things that I have talked about, the themes that I have talked about, I'm gonna go ahead and do it again. I'm gonna go ahead and do it again. This time, I'm gonna make sure that I'm strict on my timing and all that stuff. And so, even though you may have already heard my story, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, okay? If you are joining me and you wanna chit chat with me, I would love to hear your experience. Please feel free to comment below. You can DM me on all social media platforms, which will pop up on the screen somewhere, so that you can. But please feel free right now to put what your definition of church hurt is, what that looks like, okay? I would love to hear what you believe that it is, because we're about to dive in and talk about what church hurt is, and then I'm gonna tell you a little bit of my story, okay? Church hurt, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Before I get into my story, I wanted to read to you the definition of what church hurt is, and I Googled it, looked it up on Google, and the definition, it was defined as this: emotional or physical pain felt by someone that was caused by words, actions, or inactions, the lack of action, of a person in leadership in a church, congregation of the church, or person who represents the church. The church community, the spiritual community, the Christian community, let's really define that thing, likes to downplay, likes to minimize what church hurt really is. I think that we've tried to make it as if it's like, oh, you know, Miss Denise said my skirt's too short. Ooh, Miss Bertha don't like the way that I wear my wigs. Ooh, they think I wear too much makeup and my hair is too short. We're gonna dive deep into it. Church hurt stems from the manipulation. It stems from the control. It stems from the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and the sexual abuse. Let's get into it. And it's scooted, right? It's just swept under the rug as if it's something that we don't have to deal with, right? Like it's just some kind of conspiracy in the church, because when you come to the church, you're supposed to find healing. You're supposed to find joy. You're supposed to find peace. You're supposed to find family, but most importantly, you're supposed to find God's love. And sometimes it can be like the worst space to find it. It's been swept under the rug for way too long. And it's time for what's been done in the dark to come to light. It is time. And I know when God told me it was time for me to tell my story, I knew that feathers were going to be ruffled. Some people were going to feel some kind of way about it. Some people were going to be affected by what it is that I have to say. But I am entitled to my truth. I am entitled to my truth, and I'm going to tell my story. So, make sure you make sure you comment below at any time. Like, we're having conversation, okay? We're having conversation, but please subscribe to my channel, right? Today's episode is about normalizing conversations, but you may see a post tomorrow about me singing a cover with Beyonce cover song, the remix. You feel me? No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, I would love to just go ahead and jump right into it, if that's cool with you. I mean, I'm talking like you're here with me right now, but you are. We're sitting at the table. Damn it, we're sitting at the table. So let's get into it. So before I tell my story, there are 3 reasons why I've decided to tell it, and I wanted to share that before we move on. God gave me instruction to do so, and so that's what I'm doing, period. okay? It's time for people to be held accountable. The other reasons why I decided to tell my story is because I want people to know that even though you can go through such a spiritual, traumatic situation, you experience something like this, you can still move forward. You can still walk in your healing. You can still love God and serve Him with your life and trust Him with your life, regardless of what these people have done to you. Lastly, the reason why I decided to do this is because I want people to know that it's okay to tell your story. It's totally okay. It's absolutely okay, and it's absolutely necessary for your healing to happen. Now, granted, I'm not saying you need to come on YouTube and just be like, here's my story, I'm Pastor Jim. You know, I'm not saying you should do all that, but what I am saying is find some people that you can confide in. Who's in your circle, right? Who are some people that you can trust with some serious information? And with you expressing what it is that you went through, you find healing. You can really walk that thing out. When I first initially told my story, the healing that exuded in that moment was so precious. And I had people calling me. I say people, it was just a few, but I had people calling me, telling me what I should and shouldn't do and how I should have went about it, and maybe this wasn't a good idea. But I know what God told me to do, and I know what's best for myself, and that's all I can do is depend on myself at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And depend on God at the end of the day. And I hear His voice so clearly. And so even though, you know, how I'm doing it may not be the way that you should do it, please know that you can also muster up the same courage and bravery and faith that I had to muster up. And it comes from God. It comes from God. Let's get into it. So, just to start off, just so you can hear some of my traumatic experience, I was molested by my youth pastor from the age of 12 to 17. He absolutely groomed me. I remember the first day I met him, he came as our new youth pastor at the church I was attending at the time as a child, up until almost my adulthood, and he looked at me as if he wanted to eat me up and then some. Like, it was back, looking back, it's like, how did you guys not see this? But he was very interested in me. He made sure to make sure I knew that he was attracted to me. And at first I thought it was very disgusting. I was very confused, but as time went on, I became very intrigued, and it was enticing. It was like, this is great. This man, because I'm a little girl, but this man wants me. And of course, it was absolutely, absolutely disgusting. It started off with him touching me. We had a youth group, little barbecue at his house, and he was married at the time and has kids. And his daughter and I she was a lot younger. At the time I was 12. I believe his daughter was probably 3 or 4 years old. But she was very fond of me. And so we would play a lot. And I had a dog named Buddy. And so I met him that day. I love dogs. So met him that day. Was playing with him, playing with her. She needed to go to the restroom. So I walked her inside the house just to take her. I didn't help her with anything. She could handle it herself. Hallelujah. But I went in, and he, maybe 2 minutes later, proceeded to follow us inside. And so he again is telling me how beautiful I am. He's brushing himself, his whole body against me. His hands are touching places that they shouldn't be touching. But thankfully at the time, his daughter came out of the bathroom. She's like, "Ooh, Allie, there go Buddy." That was like our little thing. And so it kind of ended from there. Months went on. He still continued to tell me how beautiful I am. He's just grooming me. "Wow, you're so great at singing. Wow, you're so good at praise dancing," and blah, blah, blah. Well, we ended up going on a trip to Baltimore, Maryland, to a National Baptist conference, whatever. and we're having a great time. But when we were traveling, he actually asked his wife to not sit in the front seat. He wanted me to sit in the front seat. Right? Okay. I'm a child, never been on a road trip before because we drove from Tulsa to Baltimore, Maryland. So never traveled before or anything like that. So I'm thinking this is weird, but as the road trip begins, I'm like, this is great. We're there, we're having a great time. It's the night before we leave, and one of the youth leaders, so let me backtrack. I'm in a room by myself. I'm the only youth that's in a room with an adult by themselves. Now thinking back, I feel like it was planned, but did not know then. Okay, just coincidence, not a big deal. The night before we leave, one of our youth leaders that was with us, it was her birthday, and they went to Applebee's, I believe. A lot of the other adults decide to go celebrate with her, but youth pastor decides to stay behind. He comes to my room. He proceeds to ask me if I'm okay. He asks us if he could come in. He's looking around, and he comes on to me, and he molests me. That's when it began, and he molested me from the age of 12 to 16 years old. He ends up moving to Houston, Texas, and by this time, we're on a first name basis. I'm not calling him pastor anymore. I'm calling him by his name. And again, he kind of taught me a little bit of things that adults do, when you're sexual. So once he moved, it was no longer him molesting me. It was him wanting to have phone sex with me, him sending me pictures of his private parts, and all these different things is happening, okay? And so he ends up coming back for a funeral one year, and one of the deacons of the church passes, and he texts me, and he's like, hey, I'm going to be in Tulsa because Deacon so-and-so passed away. I would love to take you back to my hotel. I'm not going to do anything to you. I just want to be around you. Like I told you, I want to marry you. All these different things, y'all, for real. I was so afraid. I was so afraid he was going to kidnap me and then kill me because I watched way too much 40 minutes with my mama, okay? So I told him yes, and then when I changed my mind, I was just like, hey, I told my friend I didn't need a ride home, but then I ended up telling her before the funeral ended, I'm gonna need a ride home. And so I left, and that was kind of that. I ended up changing my number. I didn't hear from him after that. He ended up moving back to Tulsa. Dating a guy at the time, at his parents' house. Damien's face is on the TV screen. Literally, my response is to freeze. My knees were weak as hell. I fall to my knees, literally, and I'm crying all over again. Bawling. Ooh. And it's him doing it to someone else. So he got caught. I decided to go down to the courthouse, to the jailhouse, wherever I needed to go to let them know, hey, I know this man and he needs to be put behind bars. I decided to speak up. And that's when change happens, right? That's when change happens. So got subpoenaed to go to court, had to go to court for everything, and he is now in prison, I believe, for 50 years on 7 counts of lewd molestation and rape. That's one of the experiences that I dealt with, and thankfully there was some accountability for his actions. But honestly, I don't think there would have been if I didn't speak up. Because even when I went through the trial, he tried to deny that he knew who I was. He never knew. But the thing is I knew way too much information about him. I knew where he worked. I knew when he stopped working. I knew when he moved. We went to the same church together. So he couldn't be in too much denial, but he tried it. He definitely tried it. And he is spending a lot of his life, his precious life, in prison right now. And when it first initially happened, I did feel bad to some degree, but once I realized there's really nothing for you to feel sorry for him for, you did the right thing, I was like, yeah, And that was at around the time that I ended up experiencing another traumatic experience. So due to what I experienced at the last church, I decided to go to a new church. Became very, very heavily involved. And there was a guy that stood on the worship team. I'm just gonna call him Jeff. sung on the worship team with me, and Jeff and I just knew we was in love, and I just knew we was gonna get married. We talked about our marriage. My apartment was just literally maybe 3 minutes away from his shop. Jeffrey and I just blossomed. It was amazing until it wasn't anymore. He came to my house and basically was just like, hey, how would you feel if, I start dating somebody else? Mind you, he's already been told not to date me because he's 7 years older than me. So he was told not to date me. He said he didn't believe his friend. Now, mind you, his friend, we can call him Alan, is the pastor of the church now, but at the time he was just a youth pastor. And they're best friends. So I understood that his words had a lot of weight, but I didn't understand how weighty and toxic it really is. So anyway, he comes to my house. I used to make him dinner. He would come over. We'd watch movies. We'd go on dates, stuff like that. But this particular night, I made him dinner. He came over still when he got finished cutting, but didn't eat dinner. I was just like, how would you feel if I told you I was going on a date with somebody? And I'm like, I wouldn't feel very good unless I need to go get dressed. Like, I got on sweats and a t-shirt, but I can go, throw something on real quick. And he's like, oh no. Alan and Deanna mentioned I should try dating this girl. Her name's Dracula, and I'm just doing it to shut their mouths, basically. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. All right, didn't hear anything else after that. Some time went by. Me and him are cool. We're still doing our thing. We're intimate. We're talking about marriage still. I think that we're in an amazing space, and I'm just waiting for him to be like, okay, you can be my girlfriend now, like in public to everyone. And I believe everyone knew like we had something going on anyway. But nevertheless, he comes to my apartment. This time he eats dinner and then proceeds to tell me he's dating Dracula. Like, that's his girlfriend. And I was like, get the out my house. Sound bite right there. Get the out my house. Because what? Are you kidding me? Like, you couldn't even have the balls to say, hey, like, maybe I'm interested in this girl. So he proceeds to tell me he's still not. He's just doing it to keep Alan and Deanna's mouth shut. Now, Alan and Deanna are married. Time goes by. Dracula and Jeffrey end up engaged. What's crazy is maybe 3 nights before that, he invites me over, he makes me dinner, I stay the night. And I'm just like, he kept saying, you're gonna hate me, you're gonna hate me, you're gonna hate me. I'm like, why would I hate you? Well, he proposes to her, that's why. So I'm so angry, I don't even want to talk to the dude anymore. But of course, we sing on the same worship team, so I still see him around. He's still trying to be cool. He's still trying to be funny. He's still trying to be, and I'm just like, you coward. But honestly, I still love the guy. Like, let's be honest. So anyways, time goes by. He ends up getting married. I'm like, what are you doing? It's probably like 4 months after that. He ends up getting married. I'm like, what are you doing? Okay, so then we fast forward, and this is where the trauma happens. So it's probably like 9 months in, 8 months in. He decides to, mind you, we hadn't talked, and I'm dating someone else, and I'm actually engaged to this person now. He ends up confessing to everyone that he is not in love with his wife that he just married. He's not in love with Dracula. He's in love with me. He doesn't want to be married to her anymore. They're unequally yoked, all these different things. And immediately, Pastor Allen calls me. Now, mind you, I didn't know that this was happening. I get a call from Pastor Allen. Pastor Allen is questioning me. Like, hey, what do you and Jeffrey have going on that has caused him to do this? Because he just did this. We're confused. Are you sure you guys aren't, like, meeting in hotels and all these different things? And I'm like, I mean, I would know. I would know, but no. And plus, I have my own apartment. Why am I going to spend some money for a hotel? He can spend money for the hotel. I'm not. And here I am confiding in my pastor, my brother, someone that I truly looked up to and thought was a friend, to just be backstabbed. And so basically it becomes this whole thing that the whole church knows about, because at the time the church was small. So it becomes this whole thing that the church knows about. I'm being called a Jezebel, an adulterer, a homewrecker, people in the church are coming up to me, y'all, putting their hands on me, speaking in tongues, saying they're gonna pray this demon out of me. Just insane crap. And I'm just trying to deal with it because I don't know what else to do. I'm told to just be quiet, be silent, deal with what comes with this, and keeps it pushing. Well, in the midst of me trying to deal with it, a musician on the church's team band is helping me write a song. So we had a worship pastor at the time. I traveled with her. We would do some studio time with the guy, and so I told the guy I wanted to do my own music, so he was helping me with my music. I wrote a song. We recorded that night, laid down some rough BGVs, kept it pushing. But that particular night, I'm pretty sure he did it because he heard that I was just out here moving around, and that's never been my character ever. And so he rapes me. For the longest time, I didn't accept it as rape. I definitely looked at it as, I've never defined it, actually. I never actually took the time to think about it and define it because I didn't get a chance to. And I always assumed that rape had to be like life or death. Like, nigga, you punch me in my face, I can't fight you off of me. Like, literally clothes are being ripped off, I'm beat up to a pulp, I can't move, like that kind of thing. And I learned in therapy, no. Once I realized that, and I realized that the church was okay with what happened. And I say that because at the time they had me going through counseling with one of the pastors at the church. As I'm going through the therapy, he ends up admitting to the leadership team, it's still small at the time, that this is what happened. And so instead of them asking me like, hey, yo, clearly there's a lot going on, let's check up on you because we care for you, we love you, we want to make sure that you're well, and we want to do right by you. Instead, they just ask, listen, we don't want to know the details. Did the act happen or not? And I'm like, it did, but not in the way that you think it did. Okay, that's all we need to know. They ran with it, I'm punished. So I'm having to deal with this for the majority of my time serving at this institution. And for a very long time, I already felt worthless because from the time I was molested, I tried to tell someone at the church when it happened, and their response was, well, if you weren't so pretty, things like this wouldn't happen to you. So here I am thinking my beauty is a curse. Not only do I find myself in love with a man that is a whole chump, but then I'm raped and no one does anything about it. I don't even have the balls. I'm so timid back then. Like, how am I going to say, like, this is what happened to me? And I'm not even sure if this is what happened to me. Not even sure. But that's what happened. So I continue to move on with my life, and me and Jeffrey end up being back in contact, and I take full responsibility of my actions from probably 2016 up until 2019, 2020. We were talking to each other 3-4 times out of the week. He paid my rent, my car note, get my hair done, nails done, waxes done, buy me food, give me money just because I wanted to go buy me a new shirt or needed a color for church. And we had a very emotional relationship. Ended up having to cut ties with that. Very hard to do. I was single for almost 6 years, thinking that this man was going to leave Dracula for me, and he never did. And so I was just like, you know what, I gotta move on. But in the midst of that, I'm still tormented. I'm still having to walk on eggshells because Dracula has a pretty big position within the church. And so she would preach, and when she would preach, she'd get up there and talk about her situation, which I have no problem with as long as you tell the truth. So when she gets up there and she talks about the unfaithfulness of her husband, if you think about it, sure, we can talk about, well, emotionally, he was unfaithful. But you didn't know that. You didn't know that. He just came and said, hey, I'm in love with another woman, and I probably shouldn't have married you. I mean, hey. But when you preach about unfaithfulness in the church, majority of the crowd is going to automatically go to, he had sex with someone else, right? He was with someone outside of the marriage, and they did it to each other. But then I decided, you know what? I can't be a part of this church anymore because for the third time, I was accused of sleeping with a married man. Couldn't take it anymore. Tried to serve for a few more months. June of 2020, I was like, I'm out. September 2020, I told Jeffrey, I'm done. And that was that. And I left. There was just so much trauma, not just from that situation, but even a part of an internship that I was a part of, the cult-like behavior in that, and the manipulation and the control, and that's for another day. But even with that, the things that we had to do, the amount of trauma that happened even just within that 3 months alone was a lot. Having to write our name on t-shirts and write our sins down on the t-shirts and walk around in these t-shirts, and they call you these things when I tell you traumatic, it was just a lot. We can say it was just being creative, but it absolutely was tearing us down, ripping us into shreds. So anyways, October of 2022, Jeffrey reaches out to me and I'm mind blown. Now, mind you, we would reply to our stories from time to time. I just didn't have the heart to unfollow him on anything, because I think a part of me felt like I needed to protect him. And there was always like this what if in the back of my mind. I'm assuming, like, these are things that I'm gathering now. There was like maybe this what if, I don't know. But I just could not seem to get a hold of that. However, I was angry that he contacted me. I was angry. I was in a production. He was there with Dracula, with Alan and Deanna in the front row. Angry. Pissed me off. But what really pissed me off is the sermon. And I was just like, I can't take this anymore. God, what is it that I need to do? And I heard God say, it is time for you to tell your story. So before I got on any platform and tried to tell my story, I reached out to the church. I called several times. I emailed them 3 times. No response. I even reached out to the pastor that counseled me, and I told her everything and how I really believe like this is going to help with my healing. But instead, in return, she told me no, that's not what's going to help with my healing. In fact, I should not tell my story. And if I do, maybe write in a book, make sure I don't say any names. Don't mention the ministry's names, things like that. When I put some stories up about possibly telling my story, there are a few people that knew what was going on, or had an idea of what they thought was going on because of what has kind of floated around, the rumors. But overall, like, everything was traumatic. I can't tell you how many people have reached out and told me similar stories, the fact that they have to sign like NDAs and all these different things. So I knew I had to tell my story. That let me know right then and there that it was time for me to tell my story. And so that's what I'll continue to do until accountability is held up. Not just for that ministry. To me, it's such a bigger picture. The bigger picture is for the entire capital C church, to create some kind of change, to protect the people that partner with them, and they are truly able to walk in a space where they can find God's love. I know people aren't perfect. I'm not expecting anyone to be, but if you could just apologize for your faults from time to time, why can't that be a thing? You know what I mean? So that's my story. That is my story. And like I said, I will tell it till I am blue in the face. And church hurt is a real thing. Don't let anyone make you believe that it's not. It is so real. And I want to hear your story. If you have a story to tell, please feel free to open up to me and tell me your story. Again, comment below what church hurt means to you. How do you feel after hearing this story? What do you think there's some ways that we can keep leaders within the church accountable for their actions instead of sweeping things under the rug? And we can only go up from here. The only way change can happen is if we tell the truth. So that's what I'm here to do, is to tell the truth so people can be held accountable, so people can become free, so people can heal and know what it looks like to still love God even though they went through some shit. Excuse my French, but even though they went through some shit, see that like, hey, I still believe God exists. I have every reason not to be a part of the church. Being molested from 12 to 16 and being taken advantage of from a male, as well as the church, because obviously they cared more about their friends than they did the people that were serving them. It's traumatic. It's traumatic. And if I really dug deep, you'd be like, wow, what in the hell? What in the hell? But I hope that this encourages you today. I hope that you are able to find some sense of courage and bravery to tell your story. And please feel free to email your story or DM me on every social media platform. I'd love to hear your story if you want to share with me. Hey, listen, I would like to say, if you are new here, make sure that you subscribe to my channel, okay? Like this video, share it with your friends, all right? And let's normalize some real conversations that need to be had. Today's topic was church hurt. If you would love to tell your story, I'd love to hear about it. Please feel free to DM me on any social media platform that I am on, that I'm available on. But you're also free to email me as well. You can find all of that on the bottom or top or whatever. You should see it somewhere on this video. Thank you so much for tuning in to Normalizing Conversations. And until next time, talk to your friends. Let's keep talking about this. Peace out.